Hello, denizens. I've got my former network executive hat on, well, metaphorically, because I want to take you through this somewhat deceptive public affairs show that CBC's Fifth Estate aired about book banning, library closure, and marginalized gay and trans youth in small-town Canada. First, a bit of a background. The Fifth Estate is a popular investigative journalism show here in Canada. Don't laugh. For the most part, it has a pretty good record for neutral reporting, even going so far as to investigate the Canadian government itself. It's kind of like CBS's 60 Minutes. I would like to point out that 60 Minutes is a copy of the predecessor to the Fifth Estate, a show called This Hour Has 7 Days, which first aired in 1964, 4 full years before 60 Minutes. Sorry, I had to mention that because we Canadians have very low self-esteem. Fifth Estate actually means a class or group in society other than the nobility, the clergy, and the middle class. It's supposed to be a check on all those entitled classes. Unfortunately, legacy media has essentially joined that group of untrustworthy ne'er-do-wells, and I would suggest it's we onliners who are now the true Fifth Estate. Enough rambling. The episode is not a total duplicitous shambles, but it clearly has a bias. For those of you who are unaware, all news orgs go into a story predisposed to their corporate perspective. They say they don't, but that's a lie. And you know where this is going from the start. Let me be upfront with my bias. I'm a classic liberal. I believe in freedom of speech. I'm anti-DEI, CRT, and gender ideology. While I'm pro-gay rights, I've fought for gay rights in the early 70s, I believe you are not special because of your race, skin color, or sexual orientation. You're special because of what you contribute to society, not what you take from it. I wish all news shows would provide their biases up front because their facade of neutrality, well, it's a lie. Let's examine this unfortunate presentation.
Across Canada and the U.S., more and more libraries are on the front lines of battles over books, bans, and the freedom to read.
Battle for the freedom to read, intones the voiceover. This is disingenuous scaremongering. The story is the freedom of what to read. Religious conservatives have been trying to ban books featuring talking animals for decades. Social justice warriors ban Huckleberry Finn because of the N-word, one of the greatest novels of all time. There is no intolerance one-size-fits-all, yet this show insists there are good guys and bad guys. I'll let you guess who the bad guys are.
We investigate how those pulling the levers of democracy in this Alberta town are leaving kids hurt in their wake.
Existing in my community has just become harder than it was ever intended to be.
I'm Mark Kelly. This is the Fifth Estate.
Investigate those pulling the levers of democracy in this Alberta town are leaving kids hurt in their wake. And then we hear from an obvious member of the LGBT community talking about their pain. This person is going to be the anchor and hero of this bit of investigative journalism. The kid is soft-spoken, charismatic, and an obvious pick for the show. You immediately know it's a mean, small Alberta town leaving kids hurt versus rosy-cheeked, sexually ambiguous person. Now, I'm not saying the town is right in this case, but let's continue.
The fury has sparked marches against so-called gender identity ideology in schools and public libraries, and counter-protests demanding acceptance for all kids. And no conspiracy is too big, no library too small to be swept up in it.
Did you know the United Nations loves it?
We get to see some violence. We have no idea who is being tossed here, who the perpetrators are. Notice the use of the word conspiracy. Only one group is prone to violence and conspiracies, you know.
We're in northern Alberta, where this little library finds itself caught in the crosshairs of a culture war that's dividing this tight-knit town.
Which brings us to Valleyview, Alberta, 349 kilometers or 217 miles north of Edmonton. The controversy is not just about this library on Main Street, but this little library on Main Street. The choice of words are important. It helps build their case. This is not journalism, at least the way I see it.
There's kind of like a network of libraries that all communicate, and it sort of came out that was like, you need to watch out because these people are a thing, and they might start trying to infiltrate your library board. They might start trying to influence things or censor books or make waves.
Looks like the Valleyview Library has managed to snag a septum-wearing, tattooed, pudgy librarian right out of central casting. It looks to me like the library board thinks the library needs to be an island in amongst the knuckle-draggers inhabiting Valleyview.
A couple of people come into our community engagement night, and they came in and they sat down and said, it's a travesty that you're overfunded. There's no value in the programs you provide. We were told we should be a repository for books.
Well, that sounds innocuous enough, but as you'll see, the show purposefully leaves out one giant piece of the puzzle.
I find it very scary when people start thinking that they should control what we read.
Debbie Stewart finds it scary that people would control what we read. Isn't that what you're doing, Deb? I wonder if she hired Garcia specifically to piss off the locals.
That's one of the primary rights of living in a democratic society, is that you have the right to read and to write the things that you choose.
There is a difference between reading and writing what you choose and what a taxpayer-funded library offers. These people are activists, not practical thinkers. And what we end up with here is nothing rather than a reasonable compromise.
Valleyview's library has been a fixture since 1970, and it's always been more than just a repository for books. It now has programs for new Canadians, seniors, and a program called GSA.
The GSA is, it's a gay straight alliance, it's called. And it's for the kids to meet that don't have a place to meet. It wasn't some ulterior agenda. It was just to help these kids have a safe place to meet. Because some of them aren't supported at home, unfortunately.
They're always looking for volunteer opportunities.
You need to go home and get me stretching.
And I'll join in on it, even though I'm not leadership.
The GSA was the brainchild of Theo Robertson, engaging, articulate, and transgender, and just 17 years old.
It's sort of like a youth group with the underlying notion that we are accepting and that we love everybody. And they already identify as LGBT, and we just provide a space for them to be and to exist.
Gay Straight Alliance. Now, this is where things get dirty. Nowhere in the show do any townfolk object to this Rainbow Glee Club. Of course, it has to have a serious social justice approved acronym rather than just a club for people who don't feel like they fit. The Fifth Estate conflates this with making us think the town is anti-gay, anti-this space, and that's why the library has to be shut down. Never do we actually find out why the library's funds were cut and then why it was closed. Our heroic trans kid makes all sorts of assertions without evidence, and the Fifth Estate didn't find any either.
And we're kind of forgetting to be human beings, and we're kind of just running with the biggest stick we can find, is how it is.
When we come back, we investigate how the chaos of conspiracies is fueling the attack on institutions like libraries.
I think a lot of people are going to run, and their running isn't to build communities. Their running isn't to become the road manager. They've got other agendas I think they're going to try to push forward.
and how that turns a majority against a minority.
I would be, based on this setting, very concerned letting my children go to a library, and I'd be concerned of indoctrination at any given time.
There is this narrative throughout this show that the majority not liking what was going on in the libraries are the radical ones, and the library board and employees were the custodians of freedom of speech and protectors of the marginalized. Take Back Alberta makes the point that regular citizens are too busy with their lives to get onto library and school boards, and so they are overpopulated by left-leaning people who have the energy, the time to do so, and are probably not qualified to do anything else. Rather than some kind of compromise, we are now looking at a zero-sum game that doesn't take advantage of the input of both sides. But there is only one bad side in this show.
A preparatory introduction to alternate modes of kinship, which they also say
the protection of children is now the battle cry for social conservatives who feel under siege and undermined by socially inclusive policies.
And here the Fifth Estate, I think, makes a very clear and honest appraisal of the situation. Kelly makes for the case for the corporatized rainbow virtue signaling inclusion that apparently can never change, or you're a bigot. At no time does Kelly ask if the gender activists have actually poisoned their own well.
We're moving in the right direction. Yeah. Getting back to more of our core roots. One of my brothers was doing exactly that, getting involved with Take Back Alberta. I mean, those are, I guess the Take Back Alberta is a lot of influence on social issues.
Perrin is born and raised in Valleyview. He runs a successful trucking business servicing the oil and gas industry. And he isn't afraid to say what he thinks.
We wanted to talk to the councillors about what's going on there, but they won't talk to us.
Oh, well, it is a little bit scary, you know. It's kind of part of the legacy media, and so it's like, what's it going to come out as, you know? It's I think the gay thing, it's just like, if you're not out there dancing on the street with them, well, then they're saying that there's something wrong with you. I don't feel that they're discriminated at in our town.
But here they interview a quintessential Take Back Alberta guy who has no problem with the gay community in town. So let's give them credit for that.
Welcome to Donnelly, Idaho, a picture postcard town of 258 souls, where the air is fresh and the pace is slow. And just like Valleyview, Alberta to the north, it's the last place you'd expect the town's little log cabin library to come under attack. The building was donated by a couple, local residents, who wanted to make a place for local kids to read, learn, and grow.
Two gentlemen, Bill and Linny, they were a wonderful gay couple that lived here in Donnelly. They believed in the arts. They believed in education. We're really an anchor institution.
An anchor institution with a target on its back.
Librarians warned our state the Donnelly Public Library is for adults only. Any child who wants to go in and get a book, or even just meander through the modest room of bookshelves, has to be supervised by their parent or guardian.
Oh no, they are going to go to the United States, where the Shadow Wars began. In Donnelly, Idaho, they visit a library that was donated to the town by a couple of old poofters, of course. A charming story, to be sure. So a law was passed that requires kids to be accompanied by an adult in case they touch a book that will scar them for life. Once again, there is a missing puzzle piece that I will reveal later.
That's stunning, to have your parents sign a permission slip in order to go into a library.
Madison Pauley is an investigative journalist with Mother Jones magazine.
We visit Madison Pauley, a reporter for, wait for it, Mother Jones magazine, which is like asking Al Jazeera what they think about Israel.
For years, she's tracked how social conservative lobby groups have been influencing government officials to change policy rolling back LGBTQ2S rights.
Rolling back LGBTQ2S rights. This is a telltale bit of hyperbole, and unfortunate that the Fifth Estate would parrot this. Everyone has the same rights. What has happened of late is that gender activists have found a way to force accommodations, mostly for trans folk. No one's rights are under attack. This is a false narrative, but it does sound good. Losing accommodations that you should never have had in the first place, I understand is tough, but we don't care. Apparently, being equal is not good enough.
We no longer have gay marriage to mobilize people, so what issues are we going to be able to win on? And wow, people don't know a lot about transgender rights.
Now, this is an own goal. The truth has been revealed. Gay rights and gay marriage has been won. The only thing left is to make this thing up called transgender rights. Madison is completely dishonest about this narrative.
Teens seek a place of refuge, especially in a small community. And that place of refuge is sometimes even from their parents. The attack on the books itself, with homosexuality being part of that, I think those teens took it personally, and they deserve to see themselves reflected in literature.
Deserve to see themselves reflected in literature. Now we're coming to the nub that the Fifth Estate really doesn't want to deal with. Kelly Lawson in Airdrie, Alberta, takes us on an incomplete narrative.
Lawson is part of a Canada-wide committee of librarians tracking which book titles are being targeted for bans. Libraries in Canada are seeing roughly 4 times as many challenges than they were on average pre-pandemic.
It's called Pride Festivals, and it just teaches kids about Pride Festival and what happens at them. So there's a picture of some people just dancing with their t-shirts on. So this one, along with quite a few other titles we've had, were found actually in our toilet in the women's washroom.
Books have always faced scrutiny. For years, challenges were used to root out books with themes of racism or anti-Semitism. But about half the challenges in 2023 were books featuring LGBTQ-related themes and characters.
Here we are provided an assortment of problematic books like these Tintin examples. They show Abigail Shrier's Irreversible Damage, which I thought was a curious addition, as it was one of the first books warning against puberty blockers for young children. This book was banned by the alphabet Nazis. I guess one person's ban is another person's heroic fight for library freedom. I should remind you, some are age appropriate. But even the seemingly benign sex is a funny word introduces the concept of a gender spectrum, which is activist propaganda.
Sam is for Alberta. Sam is for her family, and Sam's a friend.
Kennedy started taking out books from the library he felt were inappropriate or that he deemed dangerous for kids, posting titles online, urged like-minded friends to check out the books they didn't like to protect any poor child that they are wanting to groom.
Some of the posts come across as very xenophobic, very like a white nationalist point of view.
Then we get this right-wing activist T.J. Kennedy and Mark Kelly commenting on his attacks on certain books. And this is my frustration with the show. What are the certain books? We never find out. Is it the books that are the problem? The Fifth Estate does not want us to know about these books. Do you know why? Because under the guise of gay kids should have books reflecting who they are, many of the books are straight up pornographic. The graphic memoir, Genderqueer, is controversial, but all you have to do is peruse YouTube videos where parents read books available to their children in their school libraries that are so graphic, some including sexual violence, that the politicians demand that the parents stop reading out loud because explicit profanity is not allowed at the meetings. But fine in grade school libraries, it seems. It's not a gay thing. Straight parents don't want explicit straight sex books in the libraries either. But apparently, gay and trans representation is more important. The show briefly displays 2 seemingly benign books. The Bare Naked book, which is quite cute, but There isn't a straight couple anywhere to be found in the illustrations. It introduces trans and drag queens. The question is, why? The plumbing is all the same. Stick to the plumbing. Parents are tired of this stealth indoctrination and have every right to call it out. And Ibram X. Kendi's book, Anti-Racist Baby, I would actually advocate burning. It is absolute trash.
And then he went after Theo, the 17-year-old high school student, after she confronted him at a community meeting.
He posted about me, he called me a tranny, he made me feel unsafe.
The Fifth Estate closes with T.J. Kennedy again, who is alleged to have said some truly awful things about our gentle trans teen. Why? Is T.J. representative of the town's attitude? Was it a stealth smear by our investigative journalist from the CBC? We get the obligatory pride gathering together for a picnic and the conclusion of the closing of the library, the safe haven for all, because without it, Valleyview citizens in their Ford F-150s will be driving up and down Main Street, shooting at people with pride flags stitched onto their jean jackets. This painful affair ends as it started. Its agenda intact. I do give them credit for the extended interview with David Parker, where he was not edited into looking like a right-wing fire breather. In conclusion, the show was a textbook example of how to seem fairish but still subtly make sure your point is gotten across. But the big question that was never answered was about the books themselves. Was the library defending what was tantamount to gay porn for teens? We don't know. I am certain that the GSA club in the library was not the reason for the controversy or the split in town, even though that was what was alleged. Religious zealots and gender activists will never agree, but it does make for a better story. I look forward to your thoughts. Till next time, denizens, be seeing you.